All right, let's talk about the economics of a U.S. government shutdown. I mean, what really happens when the folks in Washington just can't agree, and the money, well, it just stops flowing? We're going to break it all down.
You know, this quote really hits the nail on the head. The thing to remember is that the U.S. government isn't broke. It can pay its bills. The problem is that sometimes it just won't. It's not about the money, it's about politics. And when the politics get gridlocked, everything just grinds to a halt.
So, what exactly is a government shutdown? Well, honestly, it's pretty much what it sounds like. Congress has to pass funding bills to keep the government running. If they don't, that funding authority just expires. And when that happens, a whole bunch of federal agencies considered non-essential literally have to lock their doors and wait for a new spending bill to get passed.
Okay, so here's something you might not realize. Not all shutdowns are the same. Their size, their impact, it often boils down to one very specific political fight. And the one we're looking at right now, it all comes down to funding for the Department of Homeland Security. That's the flashpoint, the place where the battle lines are drawn. And that one issue creates a major fork in the road. Path number one, lawmakers manage to keep the fight contained just to the DHS funding. If they do that, we get what's called a limited shutdown. Yeah, it's still disruptive for sure, but it's contained. But if they can't isolate it, we go down path number two. The problem spills over and we get a broad shutdown that hits a ton of different agencies. And that, well, that's way more damaging. So in that more damaging scenario, the broad shutdown, what's the very first thing that happens? Well, it's a big one. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees get furloughed. And that's just a government term for being told to stay home without pay. It's not a vacation. Your work stops. And more importantly, your paycheck stops. This happens almost instantly. And believe me, it kicks off a huge economic chain reaction. And that chain reaction, it builds fast. Think about it. It's not just about the individual paychecks, as bad as that is. Suddenly, government contracts and grants are frozen. Projects all over the country just stop. Thinking of starting a small business? Well, those SBA loans are on hold. Even huge Pentagon contracts get paused. Oh, and the IRS? It starts facing delays right at the beginning of tax season. But for the financial world, here's the real kicker. All that key economic data we rely on, like the monthly jobs report, it gets delayed, or sometimes it doesn't come out at all.
And that is a huge deal. Why? Because markets absolutely run on information. It's their lifeblood. When you suddenly turn off that tap of data, uncertainty just goes through the roof. It's like asking a pilot to land a plane in a storm with no instruments. Investors are basically flying blind, and it becomes almost impossible to figure out what anything is actually worth.
So you've got all this uncertainty, but there's also a direct, measurable hit to the economy. Goldman Sachs actually crunched the numbers, and they figure that for every single week a broad shutdown drags on, it shaves about 0.15% off of quarterly GDP growth. Now, I know 0.15% might not sound like a lot, but trust me, in a multi-trillion-dollar economy that runs on momentum, it's like throwing a handful of sand into a finely tuned engine. It just gums everything up.
Okay, so the furloughed workers, the hit to GDP, those are the things you see and hear about on the news. They're the visible parts of the iceberg, but there's a hidden danger, something happening deep beneath the surface that most people never see. And this one affects the actual plumbing of our entire financial system. And one of our sources put it perfectly. Think of liquidity as the oxygen that our financial markets breathe. It's the cash that's sloshing around, available for banks to lend and businesses to borrow, keeping everything moving smoothly. If that oxygen starts to get thin, the whole system starts to suffocate. It's that serious. So how in the world does a government shutdown suck this oxygen out of the system? Well, it's actually a pretty simple, almost mechanical process. Look, when the government shuts down, it stops spending money, right? No more paychecks, no more contract payments. But here's the thing. It keeps collecting taxes. So what happens? All that cash gets sucked into the Treasury's main account at the Federal Reserve, and it just sits there. It's pulled out of the regular banking system, effectively removed from circulation.
And listen, this isn't just some abstract economic theory. This has actually happened. During a past shutdown, this exact liquidity drain got so bad that the amount of cash banks had on hand, their reserves, dropped to dangerously low levels. It got so sketchy that the Federal Reserve itself had to jump in and inject an incredible $50 billion of emergency cash just to keep things from seizing up. That's a huge red flag.
Okay, so let's bring it to today. Why is this such a big deal right now? It's all about timing. The U.S. economy has finally been building up some good, positive momentum. We've been making progress. A shutdown at this exact moment acts like someone slamming on the emergency brake. It doesn't just stop the momentum, it risks sending us sliding backward.
And this is maybe the most important thing to get. A shutdown probably isn't going to cause some big, dramatic, Hollywood-style market crash overnight. Its danger is much sneakier than that. It's more like termites, quietly eating away at the foundation of a house. You don't see the damage until it's too late. It weakens the whole system from the inside out.
This quote really sums up that quiet attack perfectly. It's a four-punch combo. Punch 1, it slows down economic growth. Punch 2, it drains that critical oxygen, the liquidity. Punch 3, it floods the market with uncertainty. And punch 4, it makes riskier assets, think stocks, look a lot less attractive. Any one of those is bad, but all four hitting at once, that creates a really, really fragile situation.
Which brings us to the big, unanswered question at the end of all this. Every time we go through one of these shutdowns, it puts a little more stress on the system. It adds another small crack to that foundation. And the real unknown, the thing that nobody can really predict, is just how many of these cracks the system can take before one of them finally causes something to break.